What up, brothers and sisters? It's your brother G World, 7_D. I'm going to do a quick talk about the Mississippi River and how our ancestors more likely traveled that river and its various different tributaries, you know, throughout within the United States, and were able to navigate themselves within the greater part of North America and into Canada. Read this real quick. The Mississippi River, the longest river of North America, draining with its major tributaries an area of approximately 1.2 million square miles, 3.1 million square kilometers, or above 1/8 of an entire continent. The Mississippi River lies entirely within the United States, rising in Lake Itasca in Minnesota. It flows almost due south across the continental interior, collecting the waters of its major tributaries, the Missouri River to the west and Ohio River to the east. Approximately halfway along halfway along its journey to the Gulf of Mexico through a vast delta southeast of New Orleans, a total distance of 2,340 miles, 3,766 kilometers from its source. With its tributaries, the Mississippi drains all or part of 31 U.S. states and 2 provinces in Canada. Although the Mississippi can be ranked as the 4th largest river in the world by adding the length of the Missouri-Jefferson-Red Rock system to the Mississippi downstream of the Missouri-Mississippi confluence, for a combined length of 3,710 miles, 5,971 kilometers, the 2,340-mile length of the Mississippi proper is comfortably exceeded by 19 other rivers in volume of discharge. However, the Mississippi rates of roughly 600,000 cubic feet, 17,000 cubic meters per second, is the largest in North America and 8th largest in the world. All right, we'll go further on to read this. On the basis of physical characteristics, the Mississippi River can be divided into 4 distinct reaches or sections. In its headwaters, from the source to the head of the navigation at St. Paul, Minnesota, the Mississippi is a clear, fresh stream, winding its unassuming way through low countrysides dotted with lakes and marshes. The upper Mississippi reaches extends from St. Paul to the mouth of the Missouri River near St. Louis, Missouri, flowing past steep limestone bluffs and receiving water from tributaries in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. The river in this segment assumes the character that led Algonquin-speaking Indians to name it the Father of Waters, literally Missa, Big, Sippa, Water. Below the River Junction, the Middle Mississippi follows a 200-mile, 320-kilometer course to the mouth of the Ohio River. The turbulent, cloudy to muddy, and fossum-laden Missouri, especially when in flood, adds impetus as well as enormous qualities of silt to the cleaner Mississippi. Beyond the confluence with the Ohio at Cairo, Illinois, the lower Mississippi attains its full grandeur. Where these 2 mighty rivers meet, the Ohio is actually the larger. Thus, below the Ohio confluence, the Mississippi swells to more than twice the size it is above. Off the 1.5 miles, 2.4 kilometers from bank to bank, the lower Mississippi becomes a brown, lazy river descending with deceptive quiet towards the Gulf of Mexico. To geographers, the lower Mississippi has long been a classic example of a meandering alluvial river, that is, the channel loops and curls extravagantly along its floodplain, leaving behind meander scars, cutoffs, oxbow lakes, and swampy backwaters. More poetically, Twain compared it to a shape to a long, palette apple paring. Today, the sunlight glittering on the twisted ribbon of water remains one of the most distinctive landmarks of a transcontinental flight, now curved largely by an elaborate system of embankment, levees, dams, and spillways. This lower section of the Mississippi was a golden, sometimes treacherous, highway for renowned Mississippi steamboats, those palaces on paddle wheels that so fired the public imagination. All right, we'll go on from there because I want to go on a little further right here. The Mississippi eastern contributaries rivers drain the well-watered Appalachian Mountain system. Most of the group, including the Kentucky, Green, Cumberland, and Tennessee rivers, flows via well-defined valleys into the Ohio and thence into the Mississippi. The erosion capacity of these rivers varies in relation to the geologic structure of their basin. These consist of harder rocks in a higher elevation and a softer silt of limestone of the late Carboniferous period, about 300 million years of age, lying below the 1,000-foot, 300-meter elevation line between the Ohio and Tennessee River and in the glaciated area of Ohio's right bank tributaries. The third contributory area of the Mississippi also differs from the other two. The upper Mississippi gathers its strength in a region marked by glacial action. After the great ice sheets of the Wisconsin glacial stage had put down layers of debris across much of Minnesota, Wisconsin, northern Illinois, and northern Iowa, huge quantities of meltwater flowed south, washing channels through the debris. Today, the upper Mississippi and its tributaries, the Wisconsin, St. Croix, Rock, and Illinois rivers, all trace the lines of these former sluiceways. Okay. And further, I'm going to go further down. Just one more. It is pouring southward. The glacial meltwaters were joined by the Proto-Missouri and the Ohio rivers. The combined waters then enlarged a great north-south trough along which the lower Mississippi now flows, some 1,000 miles, 1,600 kilometers long. This trough is 25 to 200 miles, 40 to 320 kilometers wide, and bounded by escarpments rising up to 200 feet, 60 meters above the valley floor. Geologic studies have revealed that the floor of the glacial trough was later buried by a deep layer of material washed out from ice sheets and dumped to a thickness of 100 to 300 feet, 30 to 90 meters in its central section. Now, I want to stop there. I want to basically emphasize that traveling to Mississippi and connected to other rivers, Ohio, Illinois, you have the Missouri and Colorado. The majority of rivers, people are able to travel. Our ancestors traveled by boat in the Mississippi, through the Mississippi, and through the other river channels. They traveled by boat, and they built a lot of their mounds not far from small waterways or maybe large waterways. And then they used their boats to travel inland. I mentioned before how our ancestors used not only little papyrus or reed leaf boats, but they had wooden ships. Our people made great travel globally using wooden ships and then using the sail. They were able to sail not only up and down the Nile in Africa, but they was able to sail up and down the Mississippi, up and down into the Colorado, into the Missouri, into the Illinois, into the Ohio River. We had that technology to have done that. You look at a lot of these mounds, many of them are not far, like I just stated, from waterways. This is, like I said before, we have to be critical when we study our history. We can't get into this mess that we just came from African slaves. I'm really tired of that, but there's still a lot of these Negroes on YouTube, a lot of these Negroes who've been miseducated at white universities, PWI, or at HBCUs, who are continuing to teach them that they're slaves from Africa, not realizing that our people understood the waterways, navigated through the waterways, and also look at the sky and the stars, and able to travel by you looking at the stars, and not only look at the stars above, but travel on ground or through the waterways, because the ancient waterways was like the ancient highways. The way we use like Interstate 55, Interstate 80, Interstate 57, Interstate 34, whatever. We had that in the waterways. We were able to travel through water. We use that like our ancient highways, like I just mentioned. I keep mentioning this. We traveled by ships globally. So we have to understand that, man. We have to understand. We have to get very critical with our history. We have to be very analytical about what we're studying, because most what you learn in school is basically you being indoctrinated with a bunch of lies, and you being force fed, and basically your mind is being controlled to believe in something that really isn't true, but it's going to take you to get out of that box or to deviate, to go to another path and do your own study to learn the truth. This is our history, man. I brought up the Mississippi River. I'm going to talk about this more again. I have a map of the Mississippi River, but I can't. The problem is on my phone, and the picture I have is not really enlarged. So it just gets the little channels and showing the Mississippi River, then the Ohio River, and all that stuff. But a lot of your mounds were built not far from waterways. So I wanted to emphasize that. This is me, G World. I'm going to come on another video, but I just want to talk about the Mississippi real quick. That's it. Peace and love. I get to you another time.